Galicia or Catalonia? Where is it better to live? Where do you have more opportunities? Where is the quality of life higher? Today we're going to analyze it in this video. Hello everyone!
How are you? And welcome back to my channel. In case you don't know me, I'm Anita Mateu. I'm Cuban. I live in Spain. Specifically, I live in Galicia. But today we are in another autonomous community. As stated in the video title, we're going to compare. Yes, I know this brings a lot of opinions. Feel free to comment whatever you want. But in this video, we're going to be comparing life in Galicia and life in Catalonia. This is the first time I'm making this video on my channel. I have family here in Barcelona and I usually come quite often, but my home, well, I miss Galicia, but I want to talk a little more about what life is like here to compare the pace of life a bit. We're going to compare several aspects like the weather, the language, something very interesting, which is the cost of living, rent, what it's like to live here, and job opportunities. If you're new here, I invite you to subscribe. Of course, join us. Every Friday, we have a new video on this channel, and that helps me a lot. So subscribe. It's free, honey. What are you waiting for? Of course, for this video, I won't be alone. We're going to be talking with someone who lives here. She has lived here for 2 years, just as long as I've lived in Galicia. And she is going to share her perspective on what her life has been like during these 2 years here in Catalonia. And we are in the beautiful city of Barcelona, although this girl doesn't live here in Barcelona either, but she's like me. She lives nearby. Maybe just a little bit on the outskirts, but we have experience and we know what life is like in the city as well as in several places in this autonomous community. So let's get started. And well, here's our guest for today. Leonette is a Cuban from Santa Clara who lives here in Catalonia.
Hello, well, my name is Leonette. I'm Cuban. I've been living here in Barcelona for about 2 years and 1 month. And while I've always lived here on the outskirts, although I don't live in downtown Barcelona because it's impossible to live here, I live a little bit on the outskirts in a city that's about an hour away from Barcelona. And today we're going to be comparing what life is like in Galicia and what life is like here in Catalonia because I think it's quite different. And they have nothing to do with each other, in my opinion. So yeah, we're going to be talking about those aspects.
I've been to Barcelona, but you haven't been to Galicia yet?
And I haven't visited Galicia yet, but I have been looking into it because at some point we've thought about moving to the north of Spain, to Asturias, to Galicia. And so we have been looking into what the quality of life is like there, and we've come to the conclusion that it's very different from here. So we can talk and discuss, see how you experience it and how I experience it, and see what conclusion we come to.
Well, one of the fundamental aspects, the first one we're going to talk about is the language. And maybe you know it or maybe you don't. Exactly. Galicia and Catalonia are autonomous communities of Spain that have other languages. They don't just speak Castilian or Spanish, whatever you want to call it. Here they call it Castilian. They also have their other official languages. In Galicia, Galician, and in Catalonia, Catalan. Each autonomous community treats the language differently, so let's discuss our experiences with these languages, how we've developed or learned them, and whether they're essential for daily life. As I've told you many times, people in Galicia also speak Galician. And if you're in a village, people who are more from the countryside, like from a small town or hamlet and so on, there are many people who only speak Galician. But once you go to a city, yes, you hear it less often, and I think you can live there just fine without speaking Galician. Also, people often speak to you in Galician. If you reply in Spanish, they'll switch to Spanish. Galician and Spanish are also fairly mutually intelligible. So far, my personal experience has been that I haven't had any problems. Honestly, I don't know much Galician. I do understand it, but I haven't tried to learn it, although I would like to. But I can live my life normally without learning Galician, although if you're looking for a job in some places, they do require you to speak Galician. I don't think it's essential since my Cuban friends in Galicia don't know Galician either and live normally as if nothing's different. Also, the signs, streets, and all that are in Galician. For example, my street, instead of saying calle, it says rua. But while you learn that as you go, it's not that hard either. And I think that if we move to those places, then it's up to us to adapt to them and try to learn as much of their language as we can. Because in the end, we're the ones coming from outside. You can get by just fine without knowing Galician. You'll be fine. People are very friendly and understand you. There are many immigrants who speak Spanish, so that's not a problem. Now let's look at how things are in Catalonia, as I think it's a bit different.
It's a bit more controversial in Catalonia. Yes, it's true that there's a bit more attachment to Catalan, so to speak, because, look, I've been here for 2 years and I don't know how to speak Catalan. I haven't signed up for the course yet. There is a completely free course for all people who immigrate and they can take it. I think it takes you up to level B2, so you can learn to speak it and so on. I haven't had time to do it and I feel a bit irresponsible. Even though I understand Catalan perfectly, I can't speak it. What happens is When it comes to looking for a job, maybe it's much more complicated to find a job here. They require Catalan, and they also require English, which is important since it's a very touristy city. English is not an essential language, but in many jobs, they absolutely require English and Catalan. I mean, you have to know 3 languages, Spanish, English, and Catalan. Yes, I feel like Catalan is more important here for the Catalan people. It's like they're less flexible when it comes to hiring you if you don't know Catalan. Like they just don't accept it, because it's true that there's a percentage, not a very large one, of the population that doesn't like it when you speak to them in Spanish. I worked for a while in a customer-facing job, and it's true that some people came in who would speak to me in Catalan, and if I answered them in Spanish, they didn't like it. They saw it as something bad, like it was rude of me to answer them in Spanish if they spoke to me in Catalan. So since there's that percentage of the population, I do feel like Catalan is given more importance. But that doesn't mean you're completely obligated to learn Catalan. You can also live here perfectly well and speak Spanish. But well, it does make things a bit more complicated for you.
So as a conclusion, I could say that in Galicia they are a bit more flexible with the other language, which is Galician, and in Catalonia...
Not exactly. Here it's not mandatory, but it's a bit less flexible than, let's say, in Galicia.
And well, now let's talk about the next aspect, which would be the climate. And another thing I notice here is that the streets are also called carrer. I mean, the signs and almost everything are in Catalan.
Yes, exactly. Just like in Galicia here, you'll find all the signs in Catalan, absolutely all of them. When I first arrived here, I didn't understand the metro signs or the street signs. Here, the streets are called carrer, the avenues are avinguda, and so on. So all the addresses were like that. It seemed to me that all the addresses were exactly the same, and I thought, oh my god, but well, later on I started to find my way around. But it's true that at first, even though you kind of understand everything, it was all new to me. The whole thing with the signs and the metro maps. I often got lost because I didn't know what sortida meant or similar things.
I don't know, I think we come from Cuba and we just don't imagine it. We think that here everyone will speak the Spanish we're used to, the Castilian we know, but no. Spain is so diverse, so different, so varied in each region that they even have their own languages. But that's something we only discovered once we arrived. I didn't know that before.
Look, when I came here, for me, Catalan was summed up by Visca Barça. Yeah.
And well, another thing that's very different in each of these autonomous communities is the climate, obviously. Galicia, on the other hand, has an oceanic climate with winters that are very rainy and quite cold. And summers that are a little bit cooler than maybe the rest of Spain. And the water is freezing cold. You know, North Atlantic, my love? For a Cuban from the Caribbean, it's tough to get in, but I challenged myself, and now I do. I've adapted to Galicia's cold water, though I still miss the warmth. But well, for people like us who are from a Caribbean climate, it's hard to get used to it. And I think a lot of people are put off by it, or maybe not put off, but they just say, oh no, I can't live there because it rains a lot and all that. But I've always said that personally, the rain doesn't bother me. In fact, I like it. I prefer that over the heat. But well, everyone is different and everyone has totally different tastes, but we're making this video precisely to compare. In case you're someone who's asking yourself, where am I going to move? Where am I going to live? And if the weather is an important factor for you, well, you should know that in Galicia, yes, it rains a lot in the winter, and well, now in Catalonia. Although, let me say something too. I say Galicia, but Galicia is big, and for example, in the south, it's usually warmer than in the north of Galicia. Nothing is absolute, everything is relative and depends on the region. Now, what would it be like in Catalonia? In Catalonia, the climate is much warmer.
On the other hand, I feel like Catalonia has the ideal climate. I mean, in winter it's cold, but not that kind of cold where you say, oh, I'm freezing to death. No, it's a very tolerable cold. On sunny days, if you stand in the sun, it's like, oh, the warmth of the sun feels so nice. And in summer it's hot, but not that kind of heat where you say, like in Andalusia, where it's way too hot. No, here it's not that hot. So for me, because everyone says where they live is perfect, well, for me, the climate in Catalonia is absolutely perfect. I feel like the beach isn't cold, the Mediterranean isn't cold. I go in during summer and wonder why people say it's cold. I go in and the water feels so nice, it's hot out and it's so refreshing that I don't get why people said the sea here was cold, because I think it's wonderful. However, when I think of Galicia, I imagine Galicia as grey, all cloudy, raining, from what I've been told. I've never been there.
But I'm telling you, Galicia also has its sunny days. For me, summer in Galicia is spectacular because it's not unbearably hot and it's quite cool. What I like most is that it cools down at night, even in summer, so I use a blanket.
Look, something you told me about Galicia that I really liked and I didn't know until you told me. Just now, when we were talking. It's that Galicia is where the sun sets last here in Spain.
further west. Of course,
Exactly. So in summer, the sun sets at 11 at night, and now in winter, while here it's already dark by 5:30. There it takes a little longer, so that's something I would like more about the weather in Galicia than here.
well, now let's talk about something that's very interesting too. Here we have a beautiful background, the Arc de Triomphe in Barcelona, and we're going to talk about job opportunities. Let's see. Regarding job opportunities, I always tell you that, well, I work in social media, and I have a lot of knowledge about the job market in Galicia, but I understand that yes, there are job opportunities, that you can find work. What I think is that Catalonia has a lot more industry, maybe from what I've read. For example, I have a profile on InfoJobs where I have a profile as an industrial engineer and all the job opportunities. Most of the ones that show up for me are here in Barcelona, I swear. It's like I say, wow, they're really looking for engineers here in Barcelona. That really catches my attention, and I've never seen anything like that in Galicia. Let's learn more about job opportunities here in Catalonia. Look, I'm honestly really surprised by that profile I set up. I created that industrial engineer profile on InfoJobs, and I get a lot of engineer job postings. But here, for Barcelona, there is a lot more industry as far as I know. Is that true?
Here in Barcelona, if there's something in abundance, I mean, if there's something you'll never lack, it's job offers. Because I feel like it's a market that's constantly growing. I mean, new businesses, new companies, new things are always opening up. And is it really like that all the time, especially with these more remote marketing type jobs? Whereas in other cities, maybe you don't find as many job opportunities in more, let's say, modern jobs here in Barcelona. Is that whole area pretty developed here? And do you get a lot of marketing job offers? Like community manager, because I also created a profile on LinkedIn and I get a lot of offers, these marketing ones, community manager, social media, and they're all here in Barcelona.
Also very interesting. Haven't you tried like signing up to work in that?
Yes, I have signed up, but they've never called me.
It's very interesting. For example, I have also looked for those kinds of jobs like community manager, but I don't find that many offers over there. Galicia. I always get offers in Barcelona, never in Madrid. I don't know why, but it's always Barcelona, I swear.
Upon arrival, seeing many job offers, I decided to take a marketing course and send my resume to all of them. And it's true that there are some, since there are so many offers, there are always some that aren't real. Like you can tell they're not real, like they're always posted. I mean, maybe the company is real, but what they really want is to have a database of resumes, and they're not actually hiring at that moment. So you send it and they never call you because they just want to have a database, but there really are a lot of job offers. I arrived here in November. I got here around November 10th, and by December 5th, I was already working. It wasn't hard at all for me to find a job, and I feel like there are a lot of people who live here in Spain who are Spanish and who come to Barcelona. They move to Barcelona to find work because in their cities, yes.
My cousin came here. The best job opportunity his wife found was here in Barcelona.
I have a Valencian friend in Valencia. He couldn't find a job in his field and he came here to Barcelona, and right away he got offers, and now he has his dream job and he found it here.
And well, I guess that's also why, well, it's not really anyone's fault, but because of that, there are so many people here. It's also about supply and demand. Since there's so much demand, prices go up, and that's why rent is more expensive. Now let's talk about that topic.
Everything has consequences, a consequence of there being so many job opportunities, of there being such a big market. Many people come not only from Spain, there are also many people from here in Spain who move here to find work. But the thing is, many people like myself who emigrated came directly to Barcelona. People who come from other European countries come straight here too. So what's happening is that there are a lot of job opportunities, but it's becoming overcrowded. Barcelona, in fact, on the outskirts, I live on the outskirts. Before, everything was very cheap, and now the prices in the outskirts keep going up because people used to live here. People who have lived here in Barcelona their whole lives are having to leave the city and move to the outskirts. Yes, because there are a lot of tourists here, too many people are coming, and well, the prices are being affected.
And now, one of the topics people like to know about the most is the cost of living. I think that in Galicia, the cost of living is much cheaper than here, honestly. Because, for example, Coruña, which is a city where rent prices are going up quite a bit, still doesn't compare. A high rent in Coruña is maybe around 1,000 euros, and I see in Coruña rents of 1,000, 1,200. And that's already a really nice apartment, really big, really luxurious. And living in a village, which is where I live, is much more affordable. Many people are moving to the outskirts because of that, because it's much, much, much more affordable. Despite everything increasing overall, that's still the case. But yes, we all know that Barcelona is one of the most expensive cities, or maybe the most expensive in all of Spain to live in.
currently the most expensive city in all of Spain to live in. And this is a consequence of the same thing. I was saying that since there are so many job opportunities, there's too much demand for rentals, too many people coming, and what about the rents? Look, everyone who buys a house and wants to make money from it and put it up for rent, instead of renting it to people who are going to live there, what they do is rent it to tourists. They make it an Airbnb because you earn a lot more money that way. And so the issue with rent here is getting worse and worse. It's way too expensive, but it's not just rent, food, transportation, everything is getting more expensive here.
For example, I've used public transportation here in Barcelona. The bus cost me, I took a bus and got off after 5 stops and it cost me about a little over €2. And for example, in Galicia, in Coruña, it cost me just cents, even if I go, 8 stops.
Since I live here, it doesn't affect me as much because I buy the youth card every 3 months for unlimited rides. But it is true that every time someone comes and has to buy a card for a day or a card for, 10 rides, I say, how can transportation be so expensive? I went to Madrid and transportation wasn't that expensive. I didn't see it as expensive in the Canary Islands either. It was almost free. So I feel like all of that is because there are a lot of job opportunities. Many people want to come live here and there's a lot of tourism. There's just too much demand. All of that makes the prices of absolutely everything go up.
For example, do you live in the outskirts? Because here, how much would rent be in Barcelona, more or less? Here in the center, for example,
a small studio, about 15 or 20 square meters, can cost you more than 1,000 euros. It's just that I have a friend who's looking for a place to rent right now and she can't find anything livable for less than 1,000 euros. It doesn't exist. That just doesn't exist anymore. Maybe when I came here 2 years ago, and 2 years ago isn't that long ago, maybe when I came there was some. In just 2 years, things have changed so much and prices keep rising almost daily. Wow.
Very much so. And well, the last aspect we're going to touch on is how, when it comes to integrating, it's easy to connect with the people here. They really keep to themselves, like in Galicia, like in Catalonia, for example. Let's give the floor to Catalonia first.
Let's see. First, I want to talk about stereotypes versus reality. From what I understand, or rather my stereotype is that people from the north are colder, more reserved. And I also know that Catalans have a stereotype of being kind of annoying too.
Yes, that's the stereotype everyone mentions.
That's the stereotype, but here's the reality. Honestly, I felt really welcomed here. I've never had any bad experiences with people from here, from Catalonia. In fact, I feel like they're very welcoming people. Yes, it's true that there's a small community, but a minority doesn't represent all of Catalonia. There might be a tiny group that is a bit more reserved. It's like they only like to speak in Catalan, and if you speak to them in Spanish, they don't really want to interact with you. But that's really just a small minority. You can't judge an entire community by a tiny handful of people, of course. In general, they're very nice people. They always greet you, and I don't feel like they're unfriendly like some people might say.
And well, as for Galicia, it's the same thing, just the stereotype. Maybe that they're more reserved people, more so, but like I said, I also know people who are incredibly kind. They treat each other really well. They're very friendly. The stereotype isn't what you think. Not everyone is like that. I don't know why people say it. Maybe it comes from earlier times. But nowadays, especially young people are much more open, much friendlier, and older people too. They treat each other very, very well with a lot of respect and kindness. That's something that, at least for me, always impresses me, because in Cuba, we've lost so much of that kindness, that respectfulness, and here I feel like people are very respectful. Honestly,
I've also felt super welcome. Maybe I don't know where these stereotypes started, since I remember in Cuba we thought every Spaniard was Galician.
And well, that's it for today's video. I hope you found it very interesting. This comparison of lifestyles from our experiences is always from our own perspective. Here, everyone has a different experience. This channel is about my experience and Elianette's experience.
In my case, I also speak from my own experience. Maybe someone else has a completely different experience, but look, this is what I've had to live through, and that's what I can share with you.
It's her reality. Subscribe to her channel. I'll link it in the description and a pinned comment so you can support her. I hope you liked it. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Give it a like, all that stuff. And well, that's it. See you next Friday with a new video. Bye, bye, bye.